I'm learning so much right now about the deep wisdom and healing in the practice of allowing everything to be just as it is. And I wanted to share some of the things that I'm learning and coming to understand. This practice can be applied both in a silent meditation space as much as it can be applied in a conversation, in a relationship, or in relationship to any circumstance in our life. The very energetic, the gesture of allowing everything to be as it is says, I can be with this. This too is okay. This too is safe. And even deeper than that, this too is for the greatest healing. There's greatest meaning and purpose and holiness in this as well. And it brings us to meet the very points of resistance where we might otherwise enter into tension and control and defense. And we all know what that's like, to be in a situation, be it in a quiet space, and we really believe we need to follow the trail of our thoughts and engage and do some kind of Gemini gymnastics of working something out. It's essentially trying to fix something, just as much as being in a conversation and we're just so charged with every thought that arises, every thought that comes. And the opportunity and the spaciousness to just be with it, to just listen, to just watch, just observe is lost. And what happens when we really just watch, when we observe, when we allow all things to come and go, we really get to experience the deep realization that all things come and go. And in allowing all things to come and go, it allows all things to be complete. It allows all sensations, all experiences to really do what they're here to do, right? The message can be conveyed, the medicine can be offered, the teaching can be offered. If we interrupt it, if we're quick to fix it or get out of it or resolve it, we don't really allow the teaching. We don't really allow ourselves to receive the medicine. And I think so often we get confused. This is a very common Piscean sort of confusion. We think that allowing, relaxing into a state of allowing and trusting the moment is equated with passivity. That means fill in the blank. That means, well, I'm going to be unhappy. I'm going to endure an uncomfortable, painful, compromising situation. And so we often get a little trapped in these dualistic perspectives. Right? Either I got to stop things and control it, or just endure it and allow it. And it's always so important in our practice that these wonderful, lofty sounding spiritual ideas are not taken in such a way where it's not understood. Because then it just becomes a way of denying, a way of avoiding truth, a way of hurting ourselves in the guise of trying to be spiritual, in the guise of trying to do the right thing, in the guise of trying to be peaceful or loving or accepting. And I think there's a true alchemy and beauty and poetry, which is always what it is. Like the true path is always kind of poetic. And it's poetic because in poetry, you're always just sort of speaking about the intangible. It's more artful. It's more about grace. It's more about beauty and something that you can't be linear and defined about. All truth is more like a flower, and less like a definition you get from the encyclopedia. So it's something that you actually have to yield to and really open our whole being to. Otherwise, it's not understood. The gesture of allowing everything to be as it is doesn't concern itself with the next moment. It's not creating a belief or a strategy about what then happens next. Subtly, that's actually not allowing everything to be as it is. allowing everything to be as it is also allowing everything to teach us, everything to inform us. It's allowing wisdom to grow. When we see that all things come and go, we allow the coming of the thing to fully teach us. If we never really allowed it to come and we're just reacting to it or trying to get away from it, we're actually getting away from some part of ourself that wants to be felt, that wants to be understood, that wants to be met, that wants to be loved. To allow all things to first come is just like allowing ourselves to feel uncomfortable first. Like allowing ourselves to feel angry first, allowing ourselves to feel fear first. And that doesn't mean the story, oh, I have to live in this. I have to be in a compromised situation. I have to live in a fearful reality. I have to be anger, because that's no different than trying to solve it. There's a very fine line, but it's actually it's a world of difference between a sort of compromised state of being that's uncomfortable, but is like a compromise of our own wellness and joy, versus just a very sincere and compassionate allowing. The difference between the two is the former doesn't really trust, right? The former is just very identified with the sensation itself. I am uncomfortable. This is my reality. This is existence. This sucks. And of course, what are we going to do other than try to get out of it or somehow convince ourselves that we have to stay in it? Or as the latter is implicit, a state of trust. It implicitly implies that we're trusting, that it's okay to experience this. There's a deep teaching in it. There's wisdom in it. There's medicine in this. And I won't find the medicine unless I allow myself to be here now. All of our power, always we find, comes in the present moment. All of our insights, we always realize, comes in the present moment. All of the teachings always come in the present moment. It's such an obvious thing, but we often think we can find it somewhere else. In our struggling, in our striving, in our running away from what we're feeling, from what we're experiencing right now. It's our stories, our interpretation, and our strategies relative to what is happening right now, to what's arising right now, that keeps us from the learning. This is also a practice of having the direct realization, giving ourselves the possibility of direct realization of who we are as eternal witness. The gesture of allowing everything to be as it is also a simultaneous acknowledgement that we are not defined by the comings and the goings. So it's like it's the witness that stands apart from all experiences that's also able to witness it, to watch it, to allow it. And we all know on our healing path that there is so much more, as it says in A Course in Miracles, I often quote, we are not upset for the reasons that we think. For all that is uncomfortable for us, we don't necessarily understand why we're uncomfortable. We don't necessarily understand the deeper motivations or the reasons or the dynamics underneath what we're experiencing. For the most part, most human beings live a life where we're determining our happiness based upon a precedent of control. I need to control my relationships, how other people relate to me, what's okay and what's not okay. It's often celebrated. These are my clear and strong boundaries. And maybe for many of us, we all embrace that, and that's the best we can do. In which case, that's the best we can do. But there's always the next stage. There's always the next threshold of, what if I allow a little more? I can't allow a little more. There's always just something beyond what we've accustomed ourselves to that invites a greater possibility of relaxation and allowing. And all it says is allow. And there's a teaching there's more wisdom. The choices that we make, how we respond, what we do in our life, it's informed from a greater connection to truth. We become more available to truth. And I think what we really learn is not just that we're that witness and we're not identified with the comings and the goings. We also learn of our own safety. We learn to develop an attitude that says everything is for the greatest good. All things are working together for the greatest good. We can't pretend that mentality. We can't fake that mentality. And there's nothing more unuseful than faking that mentality. We taste the truth of that only when we apply that. And we can only apply it by relaxing. We can only apply it by saying, well, in this moment, let me just trust. In this moment, let me do nothing. And there's such a great emphasis on do nothing. Do nothing on your own. Make no decisions on your own. And that can feel very confusing because, of course, we're making decisions all day. All day, we're making seemingly many, many different kinds of choices. But if we really look at how are we moving through our life, what is the basis of our life and everything that we're doing in our life, it really points back to, at the core, what we want, what's most important to us. And that which we've determined to be most important for us is going to determine how we are in response to all things. If we really accept and are honest with the deepest part of our being, the deepest, purest part of our essence, if you really acknowledge and notice that what we actually want is true happiness, we become more inquisitive, more reflective, more curious about our responses and our reactions. And we are learning along this path something really beautiful, really redeeming, really, really holy, that the path is given to us. What we need to know is given. The path we are to walk is provided. We're given the direction. That life direction is self-evident, and it's provided for us. And we actually only get to experience that when we're not interfering in the present moment with our own agenda. There's actually a process unfolding. Even in the discomfort, if we just yield ourselves to it and allow ourselves to learn and witness and see what's going on, and to come back to a trust and even a prayer, I'm open to learning here. Regardless of how I may see this, all of this reflects the one will. All things are working together for the greatest good of not just me, but for you, for all of us. The will of oneness is always operating with respect to itself, not for individual problems and individual dilemmas. Something greater, there's a plan already complete, seemingly manifesting in time. We're watching little pieces of it, like the fly on the elephant trunk that I gave that example in a recent video. We don't have to grasp the whole elephant. All we have to do is recognize there's a lot more going on than just the trunk. In this little openness to faith and prayer and just a slight gesture of, I'm open to this. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's such a profound recognition that the core of this life journey is healing. And the core of this life is about healing, and it's together, and it's greater than our understanding. It's greater than our understanding because our limited understanding at this point is very compartmentalized. It's very much mine and yours and these different problems and categories that we have. And maybe to some extent, we're beginning to apprehend the greater picture, but it's still greater than our understanding. The elephant is always going to be much vaster than what we currently know. And that's great because it means we can be humbled to recognize it's not worth getting upset. It's not worth losing our peace. And where we lose our peace, where we get upset, where we go into control, that is just at some point the next opportunity for an immense amount of compassion. All right. This is where my learning is really rich right now. This is where I can see I haven't quite grasped the curriculum. And you know what? I'm really open to learning. I'm really grateful for how hard this has been, because I understand beyond that threshold, beyond that tension, there's greater self-knowledge, greater peace, greater wisdom, greater love and healing for all of us. And I have a faith in that. And you know what? Now that I'm reminding myself of this deep knowing, I'm going to practice it better. Start again. And this is like what Virgo is all about in a way. Just if you understand Virgo from a spiritual perspective in relation to Pisces, what can we do other than just start over again? That's really what the practice is all about. But each time we start over again, it's because we've allowed ourselves to feel a little more humbled in light of the truth, in light of these essential, simple teachings that really have been taught for a long time, for thousands of years, in various ways, in different cultures and traditions, at various levels of accessibility or insight, and in different vehicles, but the same message has been there. Maybe at different times and different generations will retranslate these teachings in a way that makes more sense for what we're able to apprehend right now. I would say in general, we can come back to these essential teachings that are just deeply simple. And as we open ourselves to ponder them, we find ways of understanding them that are even more compassionate, less alienating, more accessible, more encouraging, more optimistic, because the truth actually is always accessible. It's always very loving. It's always very accepting, and it never denies any part of our being. But we don't always understand that, because in our state of resistance, we'll oftentimes just think that the spiritual path and that truth is requiring a lot of us. It's just asking us to give up so much, and we have to suffer and struggle and compromise. And it's really just our understanding is insufficient. We have yet to understand how compassionate and loving and safe truth is. So we're also just constantly reframing, and this is a Sagittarius thing, we're reframing and expanding upon our existing understanding of reality in a way that's even more accessible to our whole being. We want truth to feel incredibly practical and relevant and accessible to every part of our life. And where it's not accessible is just where in our mind at some point we've created some kind of invisible division. And it's just a matter of time until we kind of meet those places of divisiveness inside, and we realize, oh, this is really not joyful. This is really uncomfortable. I've sort of settled for a place of non-truth, and I've kind of compartmentalized it away from everything else. And once we become present to that, which again, this is born from allowing it to be what it is, but really noticing it, that's when we begin to bring it home. You know, I got Neptune in the fourth. So for me, my whole orientation to thinking of this is like welcoming in everything, coming home, saying, oh, what do you like to eat? You know, bringing it home into a space of care and nourishment. I love you. You're accepted here. That's in many ways how I find myself framing the spiritual path, a greater, more inclusive hug that says yes to even more of it. More of it. Can I allow even more of it? Can I open up to even more of it? One of my teachers, Jennifer Dawn, has said to me, and I've shared this quote many times, and this is a paraphrasing, where we've drawn the line in the sand that says, you know, here's God, and this is where I draw the line. So beyond this line is where my judgments are, is where my anger and my resistance and my fear and my control, that's where that line is. But before that line is God. Wherever we've drawn that line, inevitably, that's where the ocean waves come and just wash it away. And that can be just incredibly disorienting and incredibly scary. it can feel even dangerous. It can feel like we're losing everything. We can feel profoundly victimized. We can feel stuck, lost in a irreconcilably compromised situation. And I don't know what, in a way, until we allow truth to guide and inform all experiences, until we make ourselves available for the teaching, for the medicine, and really to see that everything, including ourselves, is at the core an instrument. It's being used, it's being organized and constructed for an unraveling, for an awakening. Prior to that, we are in an unsolvable dilemma. We do find that in so many ways, our life is in fact a compromised situation that has no solution. Because the only way that we can find resolution will be by further perpetuating and claiming the validity of our dreams of separation. So we need to affirm our separation in order to fix our separation. And this temporarily brings some sort of alleviation. This temporarily allows for some sense of, security in our individuality. But it's never the end. And there's always going to come a point where we come back to that line. Right? Like, okay, I just the waves came and I drew another line, and that might work for a while. The waves are going to come again. And maybe the line's further out, right? Like we've pushed the line further back. Our dilemmas in life and our problems, it's evident in the fact that we haven't yet found abiding happiness. In fact, most of us might even say that's not possible. I don't know if it's possible, actually. As long as we're here in this earth school, maybe there's always some threshold of where we get to open up even more. But have we really found true joy and peace in our efforts to control and decide for ourselves what things are and what things should be? Have our judgments really succeeded in giving us all that we want? It doesn't. And there's a teaching in A Course in Miracles, which it's one of my favorites. Forgiveness gives me everything that I need. And this is because forgiveness is a state of trusting and allowing. And it's in fact the essence of forgiveness being one where we are forgiving our thoughts. We believe something happening to us, and we free other people. We free life circumstance as being our oppressor. And we forgive the thoughts that we had that kept us in a state of suffering, kept other people in jail as well. Forgiveness frees everyone and everything up. And what happens when we free everything up? There's no defensiveness. We're more peaceful. We're more allowed. We're more accepting as we are, as others are, as everything is. We don't need to struggle or fight, because we realize our peace comes from our thinking, not from other people, not from what we think other people are doing to us. We have to believe a thought about the world to suffer. So this forgiveness is synonymous with allowing everything to be as it is. Literally, they're one and the same. Because a non-forgiving mind will react, will control, will judge, and it will not allow. And it'll be a chicken with its head cut off, running for resolution, not understanding that it's creating its own pain, it's creating its own suffering. Forgiveness gives me everything that I need. So this is a pushing of that line, of that boundary. Can I trust here? Can I allow here? Am I safe here? And I think there's a beautiful and brilliant way where we all have our ebbs and flows of this learning, and we come back into these phases where it's like, okay, I really don't get this one. And this is where the deep compassion of life is beyond our comprehension. There can be these samskaras, these patterns of fear and resistance and attachments that we've been holding on to for lifetimes. And then it might just take a relationship, a single relationship. It might take a singular bad day or event in the workplace right? Or sickness, a singular anything to elicit and bring up something that's actually been in us, but unhealed and unchecked and unwatched. It might seem like, okay, right now, this is a really hard relationship and I just want to figure it out and get out of this, or, heal it, or, but to actually appreciate that we've gotten to a point where the fever's breaking. It's been in us. Now we have the blessed opportunity to finally face ourselves. And again, none of this means anything. Michelle and I were at a David retreat, and there are a couple of times where David Hoffmeister, he's one of our teachers in A Course in Miracles, and there are a couple of times where some people ask these theoretical questions, right? What would you do if some Nazis came and were trying to, persecute some Jewish friends? Wouldn't you want to just protect them? And someone asked some other example of some kind of state of oppression. And what I really loved and appreciated about David's response, he didn't answer it, because theoreticals don't exist. And the mind loves to answer in theoreticals. It loves to decide. It loves to look at a situation, creating it in its mind and deciding, this is what I would do in this situation. This is my moral stance. This is how to behave. And we think if we don't have that we're not going to be moral people. We're not going to be ethical people. That we're not going to be good people. We're just going to be walked all over, or people or the earth will be destroyed. Environmental catastrophes will happen. People will suffer. But the fact that theoreticals don't exist really only means that there's some sort of aspect of protection and defense and fear that leads us to think and create a thought about some kind of future that doesn't exist. So we think, well, if I just, allow, how will I solve this problem later on? Or the next time this situation comes up, what do I do? Right? And this is that beautiful, tricky threshold where, well, that future hasn't happened yet. And in fact, it never will. It's never going to be what we think of it. It's always just going to be this moment. And the teachings that we're seeking, the insight that we're looking for, will happen starting now. Like, now is enough. Of course, if there are things to plan for, we will. Our life is full of that, and we do that. It's very natural. But there's a subtle difference between leaving now and sort of strategizing to protect ourselves for the future when certain other things will happen. What's my stance? What do I do? How do I work with that? I think we all do that. But as we become aware of that, we realize, ooh, this is energy that can be brought here and now. I once had a dream where in the dream I sort of woke up and I said, I want to travel the world and share music and teach, something like that. And then I heard the words, now we'll take you there. Which of course, when I'm there, that'll also be now, which basically is another way of saying, be here now. Walk the path, follow the trail. Everything that's needed is provided. And I think there's a really beautiful teaching that I want to focus on right now. And I mentioned this in my last Mercury-Neptune video, speaking about the current Mercury stationing direct in opposition to Neptune. As we walk this path of healing and unraveling, we actually come to recognize that the highest understanding is that we allow all things in our life to be a part of the unraveling, right? And so everything about us, everything that we know, all of our relationships, the work that we do, more and more, everything becomes encompassed in the singular purpose of healing and love and forgiveness and return, which means there's less and less categorization. And we find that truth, spirit, oneness will use every part of our life for its purposes. And this is where we can appreciate the things that we love, the things that we're passionate about, the things that we love to do. Those are the things that will actually be utilized, where we'll have the opportunity to step into our passions, step into our natural gifts. Who gave us our gifts? They were created with us. We didn't invent them, right? That which we're passionate about points back to our essential divine nature. And so everything gets to be used. And that's one of the most beautiful expressions of living here, where we find that we actually get to take all of our life and devote it, designate it, and recognize it for the highest purposes of healing. What better joy than to, if you're a musician or you love music, to get to do music as a path of healing, right? Where your music gets to be a way of bringing love and joy into your life and others. If you're in a relationship, what better way of experiencing relationship for that relationship to become a holy companionship, one where there's true unconditional love and acceptance, and you learn how to be true companions to one another, to support each other, to see each other, and fully accept one another as you are. And then the relationship itself becomes a teaching of unconditional love. But the process of getting there might mean a lot of letting go of control, letting go of judgment, a lot of applying the practice of faith and trust. We can't allow every part of our life to be used for healing, including our gifts, if there's agenda. I want to be a famous musician, and anywhere where we're focusing on lack, I want more of this. I want more attention. I want more opportunities. I want more from this person. I want them to treat me this way, right? Where we're giving attention to what's not here is where we're not allowing the path to take us there. And these are the moments where we're going to think the most about what we need to do to get there. There's a brilliance to our life that is beyond our own capacity for control. All beautiful, miraculous stories always seem to carry the same archetypal theme. There's a letting go, a trusting and allowing. It seems like we're walking away from what we were otherwise attached to prior to the letting go, whoever, whatever that might be. And in that letting go, it all returns. But it returns without that grasp. It returns as an extension of a greater process of healing and remembering. And that archetypal story seems to always be the same in all experience. I remember there's this one time when I began my album recording project. I was in communication with a recording engineer, and it was like the craziest situation, back and forth all the time. He would miss my emails and something would happen. And I was sleeping in my car at that time, didn't have a home base. I was literally just hanging out near where this recording artist lived, this recording engineer lived, for like 3 or 4 months, waiting until he was available. And it was this ongoing process of being energetically kind of stuck in this place where I dreamt this was going to happen. I want it to happen. I'm inspired. Like, I want to do this album. And he just wasn't available. But then he was, so I would stick around for another week, and then the week would come and something would come up. So it was this crazy holding pattern, and I wasn't really living my life. Like, I wasn't really doing anything. I was just sort of in this energetic waiting state. And yeah, I met people, and actually I met people. I would sing with a lot of people, and some people even published a couple of my songs in this like local songbook, and there were some neat developments, but it was a very ungrounding time. So there's this one day where I just sort of got really honest with myself. I just looked at what was. I acknowledged, I'm not happy. This is uncomfortable. I have no home base. I'm living in my car. It was around the New Year, so it was kind of cold and wet. And I was waiting for someone else to be available. And I just intuitively felt I need to move on with my life and move towards purpose and meaning. So I opened up towards that. And actually one person invited me to travel up to this other town and do a concert. And I'm like, well, let me just go up there. That's where there's direction there. So I was making plans towards that. And I just came to the state of, I'm going to let go of the recording project for now. wait until there's a clear energetic around it. I need to live my life. And when it's time, it will be time. I think Mercury was either stationing retrograde or stationing direct on that day. I forgot which one. So I made that decision. I think I began making plans to travel. Something like that. And I took a walk and I came back and I got a message from this recording engineer. He said, "Hey, I'm so sorry. It's been crazy over here. If you want, I'm available this week." And it was perfect. I let go and I was really prepared to move on and just let go of the struggle. And then he was available. And then immediately I posted on Facebook, I need a place to live. I didn't want to live in my car. I wanted a solid place for this recording project. Immediately, this one person who was a friend of a friend said, "Hey man, let's meet. You sound awesome." I didn't have a lot of income. He says, "Yeah, just stay in my place. I have a little meditation hut. You can stay there. There's a piano in the meditation hut and in the living room." And he said, "Yeah, pay whatever you want and contribute whatever you can. I just want you to stay here. Please play music." And ends up I needed a bass for my recording. He had a bass. He lent me a bass. To extend this story a little bit, I began working on the recording project. I forgot how long it was. It was maybe a couple months. Several times I got sick during the recording. What happened was the first day that I recorded, I think I just sang with my guitar like 10 songs or something like that. And then I realized after that first day that if I want to really produce a good album, I need to not do it that way, right? I need to do the guitar separately, do a click track, have good rhythm. I might want to hire a drummer, a percussionist. I sort of had this very ambiguous idea that I would go to the studio and it would all just kind of magically work out. But I was faced with a very disillusioning realization, which was, oh, this takes a lot of work and planning and collaboration, and I'm not prepared. And I've never sung into a mic before, and I was disheartened with how my voice sounded. It didn't feel good. And I kept on getting sick and tired, and I would feel exhausted and drained and depressed after my recording work. It was another issue, right? I was given clear vision to go and meet this man. Life worked out perfectly for us to meet and to collaborate and, decide to work together. Then I had to let go after several months of it not happening. Then he called me and I was like, I let go, and we started. And then it was given to me, but it wasn't happening. It wasn't flowing. I didn't feel good about it. And the greatest struggle that I had during that time was feeling like a failure. I was given this opportunity, all the thoughts. Spirit gave this to me. It was meant to be. I even did the spiritual work of letting go, and it still came back. And here I am. I'm squandering it. I'm not available for it. I'm not prepared. I'm not good enough. I was so depressed. And what happened next? The thing that we always end up doing. It takes a while sometimes, but this is the teaching. I got honest with myself. And I realized I'm not ready. I'm forcing it. This is not time. And to get to that point, I had to really meet my grief, my disappointment, my depression. I left my city of Olympia, Washington to move to California to live in a car with no plan to do this recording work. And almost an entire year after I left my apartment, I walked away from the project. And I wrote in a text message to him, I realize this is a good time to pause, maybe later on after I've developed more clarity and vision for the songs and how they want to come through. And my voice is more confident and developed, we can come back. And he wrote back this one line that just brought all this peace. He says, "Great, that feels aligned." Something like that. But he used the word "that feels aligned," that phrase, in some way. And hearing him say that just validated, oh, yeah, that feels very aligned. And it also said, there will be another time where we will come back and work with each other. This was in the spring of 2016, right? Left my apartment in the summer of 2015. In the spring of 2016, I started and stopped. And basically it took 3.5 years until I actually completed my album. So I can speak on and on actually about further learning that continued to take place in the next 3.5 years. And I won't. I think you get the idea. It's a combination of being given vision, dreams of meeting other musicians, and then meeting setbacks and pitfalls. There's this one song that I recorded in Southern California, put a lot of money into it, took me dry. And it was with this very enthusiastic recording artist, and I didn't like it. And I went through probably a couple months of struggling with, do I just accept it and keep it? It's good. The question, it's good. And these are the things we do with our mind. It's good enough. It's good enough. I don't have to be perfect. But then this nagging sense of, but it doesn't feel right. But it's good enough. And I keep on learning these lessons of letting go of perfectionism. And I think we keep on facing these lessons, these obstacles, these seeming impasses to work out these seeming dualities. What I actually learned was to trust my heart, not the mind that's trying to rationalize, okay, it's good enough, or no, maybe I need to do more work, but just to trust. And I had to accept there's something in me that wanted to feel differently about the song. So I recorded it again with another man that I met, cost even more money. He had to travel a couple hours to record it. A guy hired a drummer, and I rushed. I followed his advice, and it went too quickly, and I didn't take the time that I needed. Long story short, I recorded for a third time with the recording engineer that I started with, and it took a long time to do it with him, but I went slowly. I listened. I was meticulous in paying attention to that sense of alignment, feeling, this is what the song wants to be. This feels right. There's so many examples of that, of going through these phases of wanting to give it up entirely, wanting to let go, wanting to compromise. Right. So the end of 2019, I completed my album. It's a beautiful album. And it took in total, I guess you could say 4.5 years from when I began moving towards the creation of the album till its completion. 4.5 years. But it was a healing time. There are so many parts of our life that are like that. And I think we oftentimes get so fixated on the achievement, on getting what we want, that we don't allow for the miracle. What's the miracle? The miracle is the return of love. The miracle is allowing God's will to manifest and lead and guide all circumstances. When I stopped in 2016, I went to Hawaii and I met musicians that ended up collaborating with me. I lived in a community where I sang a lot and I developed my voice. I worked on harmonies. I developed confidence. Unfoldings happened that involved all the people, the tools, the skills, the guitars, the collaborations, the passions to come together organically. We often just have to allow ourselves to just be where we are, not forcing our timing, our conditions for true beauty and healing to truly manifest in a way that is actually far greater than what we can understand. It's that teaching, the last will come first. All right. Let go of getting there now so you can be here now, so that here will take you to there.